Hello, welcome back. Um, we're going to start Book 5 of the Odyssey today. It begins, let me get to my right page here, on page 152 in our version of the Odyssey. Page 152, we're going to read Book 5, which is focused on Odysseus and his escape from Calypso's island. It's called Odysseus, Nymph, and Shipwreck. So I'm going to go through this book, paying attention to our guided reading questions. In addition to the guided reading questions, I'll try to add a little content and texture as we read this story together. Then I'll kind of skip through the end of Book 5, most likely, to get into Book 6. And then we'll do the beginning of Book 6 together with the guided reading questions that hopefully you have either online or printed out as well. And when we're done that, we can go on to the next video, which will be just a summary, a retelling of the important events of the end of Book 6, 7, and Book 8. Let's get started. As dawn rose up from bed by her lordly mate Tithonus, bringing light to immortal gods and mortal men, the gods sat down in council, circling Zeus, the thunder king, whose power rules the world. Athena began, recalling Odysseus to their thoughts. The goddess, deeply moved by the man's long ordeal, held captive still in the nymph Calypso's house. Father Zeus, you other gods who never die, never let any sceptred king be kind and gentle now, not with all his heart or his mind on justice. No, let him be cruel and always practice outrage. Think, not one of the people whom he ruled remembers Odysseus now, that godlike man and kindly as a father to his children. Now he's left to pine on an island racked with grief in the nymph Calypso's house. She holds him there by force. He has no way to voyage home to his native land, no trim ships in reach, no crew to ply the oar and send him scudding over the seas broad back. And now his dear son. They plot to kill the boy on his way back home. Yes, he has sailed off for news of his father to holy Pylos first, then out to the sunny hills of Lacedaemon. My child, cried Zeus, who marshals the thunderheads, replied. What nonsense you let slip through your teeth. Come now, what's the plan? What wasn't the plan your own? You conceived it yourself. Odysseus shall return and pay the traitors back. Telemachus, sail him home with all your skill. The power is yours, no doubt. Home to his native country, all unharmed, while the suitors limp to port, defeated, baffled men. With those words, Zeus turned to his own son Hermes. You are our messenger, Hermes, sent on all our missions. Announce to the nymph with lovely braids our fixed decree. Odysseus journeys home. The exile must return, but not in the convoy of the gods or mortal men. No, on a lashed makeshift raft, and wrung with pains, on the 20th day he will make his landfall. Fertile Scheria, the land of the Phaeacians, close to kin to the gods themselves, who with all their hearts will prize him like a god and send him off in a ship to his beloved land, giving him bronze and hoards of gold and robes, more plunder than he could have ever won from Troy if Odysseus had returned intact with his fair share. So his destiny ordains. He shall see his loved ones reach his high-roofed house, his native land at last. So Zeus decreed, and the giant-killing guide obeyed at once. So let me pause there, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So Athena wants the gods to think of Odysseus, remember Odysseus, and have sympathy, and allow him to return home. And Zeus kind of says, why are you bothering with us with this, Athena? You have the power to do this. Hermes, go tell Calypso who's on a nymph, is not as powerful as the Olympians, but a god nonetheless. Go tell the nymph that she must let Odysseus go. He shall go to Scheria. They will heap him with treasures, and he will eventually make it home. So that's the intro here. Quickly, under his feet, Hermes fastened the supple sandals, ever glowing gold, that wing him over the waves and boundless earth with the rush of gusting winds. He seized the wand that enchants the eyes of men whenever Hermes wants or wakes us up from sleep. That wand in his grip, the powerful giant killer swooping down from Pieria, down the high, clear air, plunged to the sea and skimmed the waves like a tern that down the deadly gulfs of the barren salt swells glides and dives for fish, dipping its beating wings in bursts of spray. So Hermes skimmed the crest on endless crest. That's great. We haven't had one of these in a little while, so let me take a moment to highlight this. We have, of course, Hermes' epithet, the powerful giant killer, is a reference to another myth about Hermes. Right? Swooping down, he plunged to the sea and the waves like a tern, that down the deadly gulfs of the barren salt seas, salt swells, glides and dives for fish, dipping its beating wings in the bursts of spray. So Hermes skimmed crests on endless crests. This is a great example of an epic simile. So all these things that we've learned to identify in the Iliad, they're definitely still present in the Odyssey, and you'll still have to make note of them every now and again. All right, we'll continue. Line 60, book 5, line 60. But once he gained that island, worlds apart, up from the deep blue sea, he climbed to dry land and strode on till he reached the spacious cave where the nymph with lovely braids, another epithet, had made her home, and he found her there inside. A great fire blazed on the hearth, and the smell of cedar cleanly split and sweet wood burning bright wafted a cloud of fragrance down the island. Deep inside she sang, the goddess Calypso, lifting her breathtaking voice as she glided back and forth before her loom, her golden shuttle weaving. Thick, luxuriant woods grew round the cave, alders and black poplars, pungent cypress too, and there birds roosted, folding their long wings, owls and hawks and the spread-beaked ravens of the sea, black skimmers who make their living off the waves. And round the mouth of the cavern trailed a vine laden with clusters bursting with ripe grapes. 4 springs in a row, bubbling clear and cold, running side by side, took channels left and right. Soft meadows spreading round were starred with violets, lush with beds of parsley. Why, even a deathless god who came upon that place would gaze in wonder, heart entranced with pleasure. Hermes, the guide, the mighty giant killer, stood there, spellbound. Right, so Calypso's island is a little bit like a paradise in Eden. Has all of these beautiful trees, this lush green meadow, this clear cold springs, grapes that are so full that there are four for every vine, right, or whatever they said. Bursting ripe grapes. Oh, the 4 springs are later, so just a vine filled with grapes. Right? And even Hermes, a god, is very impressed with the beauty of the island. But once he'd had his fill of marveling at it all, sorry, I need to advance the computer. Goddess knew him at once as soon as she saw his features face to face. Immortals are never strangers to each other, no matter how distant. But as for great Odysseus, Hermes could not find him within the caves. Wrenching his heart with sobs and groans and anguish, gazing out over the barren sea through blinding tears. But Calypso, lustrous goddess, questioned Hermes, seating him on a glistening polished chair. God of the gold, why have you come? A beloved, honored friend, but it's been so long, your visit's much too rare. Tell me, what's on your mind? I'm eager to do it, whatever I can do, whatever can be done. And the goddess drew a table up beside him, heaped with ambrosia, mixed him deep red nectar. Hermes, the god and giant killer, ate and drank. Once again, even the gods practice Xenia. Once he had dined and fortified himself with food, he launched right in, replying to her questions. As one god to another, you ask me why I've come, I'll tell you the whole story, mince no words. Your wish is my command. It was Zeus who made me come, no choice of mine. Who would willingly roam across a salty waste so vast, so endless? Think, no city of men in sight, and not a soul to offer the gods a sacrifice and burn the fattest victims. But there is no way, you know, for another god to thwart the will of storming Zeus and make it come to nothing. Zeus aims, keep beside you a most unlucky man, most harried of all who fought for Priam's Troy, 9 years sacking the city in the 10th, and then sail for home. But voyaging back, they outraged Queen, who loosed the gales and pounding seas against them. There all the rest of his loyal shipmates died, but the wind drove him on. The current bore him here. Now Zeus commands you to send him off with all good speed. It is not his fate to die here, far from his own people. Destiny still ordains that he shall see his loved ones reach his high-roofed house, his native land, at last. But lustrous Calypso shuddered at this. Sorry, let me advance my computer again. I keep forgetting. But lustrous Calypso shuddered at those words and burst into a flight of indignation. So she's upset. Hard you are, you gods, you unrivaled lords of jealousy, scandalized when goddesses sleep with mortals openly, even when one has made the man her husband. So when Dawn with her rose-red fingers took Orion, you gods in your ease were horrified. Artemis, throned in gold, attacked him out on Delos, shot him down to death with gentle shafts. And so when Demeter, the graceful one with lovely braids, gave way to her passion and made love with Iasion, bedding down in a furrow plow 3 times, Zeus got wind of it soon enough, I'd say, and blasted the man to death with flashing bolts. So now at last, you gods, you train your spite on me for keeping a mortal man beside me, the man I saved, riding astride his keelboard all alone, when Zeus, with one hurl of a white-hot bolt, had crushed his racing warship down the wine dark sea. There all the rest of his loyal shipmates died, but the wind drove him on, the current bore him here. And I welcomed him warmly, cherished him, even vowed to make the man an immortal, ageless all his days. But since there is no way for another god to thwart the will of storming Zeus and make it come to nothing, let the man go. If the Almighty insists, commands, and destroy himself on the barren salt sea. I'll send him off, but not with any escort. I have no ships in reach, no crew to ply the oars and send him scudding over the sea's broad back. But I will gladly advise him, I'll hide nothing, so he can reach his native country all unharmed. So, just let me pause for a moment there. What is Calypso so upset about? Right? There's a double standard that the gods are talking about. Let me look at the text with you for a moment. Right? She gives a couple of different examples. She said Dawn, the goddess Dawn, took Orion a mortal. And what happened to Orion? Artemis shot him down. Right? Demeter, once again, took a mortal, Iasion. And what happened to him? Zeus lightning bolted the man to death. And now Calypso. Calypso has also taken a mortal man. She has vowed herself to make him her husband, make him immortal. She's not just sleeping around with anybody. She loves Odysseus and wants to be with Odysseus. And because a goddess is happy with a mortal, she claims that the gods find it that they're just out of spite going to train their will on Calypso and force her to send Odysseus home. And so she's upset by it, but she says, nobody can fight the will of Zeus. So if this is what is commanded, this is what I shall do. I don't have a ship to give him, but I'll help him in the way that I can. All right, let's go back to the reading. And the guide and giant killer reinforced her words. Release him at once, just so. Steer clear of the rage of Zeus. For down the years he'll fume and make your life a hell. With that, the powerful giant killer sped away. The queenly nymph sought out the great Odysseus. The commands of Zeus still in her ears, and found him there on the headland, sitting still, weeping, his eyes never dry, his sweet life flowing away with the tears for his foiled journey home, since the nymph no longer pleased. In the night he'd sleep with her in the cave, had no choice. Unwilling lover alongside lover, all too willing. All his days he'd sit on the rocks and beaches, wrenching his heart with sobs and groans and anguish, gaze out over the barren sea through blinding tears. So coming up to him now, you won't grieve here any longer. No, don't waste your life away. Now I am willing, heart and soul, to send you off at last. Come, take bronze tools, cut your lengthy timbers, make them into a broad-beamed raft, and top it off with a half-deck high enough to steam clear on the misty seas. And I myself will stock her with food and water, ruddy wine to your taste, give you clothing, send you a stiff following wind, so you can reach your native country all unharmed, if only the gods are willing. They rule the vaulting skies. They're stronger than I to plan and drive things home. Long enduring Odysseus shuddered at that, and broke out in sharp flight of protest. Passage home, never. Surely you're plotting something else, goddess, urging me in a raft to cross the ocean's mighty gulf, so vast, so full of danger, not even deep-sea ships can make it through, swift as they are and buoyed up by the winds of Zeus himself. I won't set foot on a raft until you show good faith, until you consent to swear, goddess, a binding oath. You'll never plot some new intrigue to harm me. So let me pause there. This is part of Odysseus's metis, his cleverness. He's never trusting. He's always on the lookout for a trap. He's always thinking ahead. And so he's been imprisoned on Calypso's island for quite a while. And he's been pining over the loss of his journey home. He's missing his wife, his child. And even though, as Hermes described, he's in this paradise, this perfect island, he spends all day long crying. All right, that's what he does every day. And so now this escape sounds too good to be true. So he's very wary. He wants Calypso to make some show of faith, some promise to make sure it's not a trap. He was so intense. The lustrous goddess smiled, stroked him with her hand, savored his name, and chided, "Ah, what a wicked man you are, and never at a loss. What a thing to imagine. What a thing to say. Earth, be my witness now. The vaulting sky above and the dark cascading waters of the Styx. I swear by the greatest, grimmest oath that binds the happy gods, I will never plot some new intrigue to harm you. Never. All I have in mind and devise for you are the very plans I'd fashion for myself. If I were in your straits, my every impulse bends to what is right. Not iron, trust me, the heart within my breast. I am all compassion." And lustrous Calypso quickly led the way as he followed in the footsteps of the goddess. They reached the arching cavern, man and god as one, and Odysseus took the seat that Hermes just left, while the nymph set out before him every kind of food and drink that mortal men will take. Calypso sat down face to face with the king, and the women served her nectar and ambrosia. They reached out for the good things that lay at hand, and when they'd had their fill of food and drink, the lustrous one took up a new approach. "So then, royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, man of exploits, new epithet for Odysseus, the man of exploits. Still eager to leave at once and hurry back to your own home, your beloved native land? Good luck to you even so. Farewell. But if you only knew down deep what pains are fated to fill your cup before you reach that shore, you'd stay right here, preside in our house with me, and be immortal, much as you long to see your wife, the one you pined for all your days. And yet, I just might claim to be nothing less than she, neither in face nor figure. Hardly right is it for a mortal woman to rival a mortal goddess? How? In build? In beauty? Ah, great goddess, worldly Odysseus answered. Don't be angry with me, please. All that you say is true. How well I know. Look at my wise Penelope. She falls far short of you, your beauty, stature. She is mortal after all, and you never age or die. Right? He says, oh, no, it's not the beauty of Penelope. She couldn't compare herself to a goddess. Once again, clever Odysseus, never claiming his wife more beautiful than a goddess. That usually ends in disaster in Greek myths. Right? Nevertheless, I pine all my days to travel home and see the dawn of my return. And if a god will wreck me yet again on the wine dark sea, I can bear that too, with a spirit tempered to endure. Much have I suffered, labored long and hard by now in the waves and wars. Add this to the total, bring the trial on. Even as he spoke, the sun set and the darkness swept the earth. And now, withdrawing into the cavern's deep recesses, long in each other's arms, they lost themselves in love. When young dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, Odysseus quickly dressed himself in cloak and shirt, while the nymph slipped on a loose glistening robe, filmy a joy to the eye, and round her waist she ran a brocaded golden belt, and over her head a scarf to shield her brow, then turned to plan the great man's voyage home. She gave him a heavy bronze axe that fit his grip, both blades well honed with a fine olive haft, lashed firm to its head. She gave him a polished smoothing adze as well, and then she led the way. The adze is another axe-like tool that's often used to hollow out a log to make it more like a canoe or better shaped for a raft. To the island's outer edge where the trees grew tall alders, black poplars, and firs that shot sky high. Seasoned, drying for years, ideal for easy floating. Once she'd shown her guest where the tall timber stood. Calypso, the lustrous goddess, headed home again. He set to cutting trunks. The work was done in no time. 20 in all he felled. He trimmed them clean with his axe, split them deftly, trued them straight to a line. Meanwhile, the radiant goddess brought him drills. He bored through all his planks and wedged them snugly, knocking them home together, locked the pegs and joints. Broad in beam and bottom flat as a merchantman when a master shipwright turns out her hull. So broad the craft Odysseus made himself. Working away at speed, he put up half decks pinned to close set ribs, and a sweep of gunwales rounded off the sides. He fashioned the mast next and sank its yard in deep, and added a steering oar to hold her right on course. Then he fenced her stem to stern with twigs and wicker, bulwark against the sea surge, floored with heaps of brush. And lustrous Calypso came again, now with bolts of cloth to make the sail, and he finished that off too, expertly. Braces, sheets, and brails, he rigged all fast on board, then eased her down with levers into the sunlit sea. That was the 4th day, and all his work was done. On the 5th, the lovely goddess launched him from her island, and once she had bathed and decked him out in fragrant clothes, and Calypso stowed 2 skins aboard, dark wine in one, the larger one held water, added a sack of rations filled with her choicest meats to build his strength, and summoned a wind to bear him onward fair and warm. The wind lifting his spirits high, royal Odysseus spread sail, gripping the tiller, seated astern, and now the master mariner steered his craft, sleep never closing his eyes, forever scanning the stars. The Pleiades and the plowmen late to set, and the great bear that mankind also calls the wagon. The Great Dipper. The Pleiades is a constellation we still have today. The Plowman, I assume, is the Little Dipper. I'm not sure about that one. She wheels on her axis, always fixed, watching the hunter. That's Orion. And she alone is denied a plunge in the ocean's bath. Hers were the stars the lustrous goddess told him to keep hard to port as he cut across the sea. And 17 days he sailed, making headway well. On the 18th, shadowy mountains slowly loomed. The Phaeacians' island, reaching toward him now, over the misty breakers, rising like a shield. All right, so Odysseus has a good journey for 18 days. Calypso sends him on. He has a great raft, the nicest raft anyone's ever seen. But now there's going to be trouble. We are book 5, line 309. But now Poseidon, god of the earthquake, saw him, just returning home from his Ethiopian friends. From miles away on the Solymi mountain range, he spied Odysseus sailing down the sea, and it made his fury boil even more. He shook his head and rumbled to himself, outrageous! Look how the gods have changed their minds about Odysseus while I was off with my Ethiopians. Just look at him there nearing Phaeacian shores, where he's fated to escape his noose of pain that's held him until now. Still, my hopes ride high. I'll give that man his swamping fill of trouble. With that, he rammed the clouds together, both hands clutching his trident, churned the waves into chaos, whipping all the gales from every quarter, shrouding over in thunderheads the earth and sea at once. And night swept down from the sky. East and south winds clashed, and the raging west and north sprung from the heavens, roiled heaving breakers up. And Odysseus' knees quaked, his spirit too. Numb with fear, he spoke to his own great heart. Wretched man, what becomes me now at last? I fear the nymph foretold it all too well. On the sea shall look, it all comes to pass. What monstrous clouds, King Zeus crowning the whole wide heaven black, churning the seas in chaos, gales blasting, raging round my head from every quarter. My death plunge in a flash. It's certain now. 3, 4 times blessed, my friends in arms, who died on the plains of Troy those years ago, serving the sons of Atreus to the end. Would to God I died there too, and met my fate that day. The Trojans, swarms of them, hurled at me with bronze spears, fighting over the corpse of proud Achilles. A hero's funeral then, my glory spread by comrades. Now what a wretched death I'm doomed to die. At that, a massive wave came crashing down on his head, a terrific onslaught spinning his craft round and round. He was thrown clear of the decks, the steering oar wrenched from his grasp, and in one lightning attack the brawling gale wind struck full force, snapping the mast midshaft and hurling the sail and sailyard far across the sea. He went under a good long while. No fast way out. No struggling up from under the giant waves' assault. His clothing dragged him down, divine Calypso's gifts. But at last he fought his way to the surface, spewing bitter brine, streams of it pouring down his head. But half drowned as he was, he not forgot his craft. He lunged after her through the breakers, laying hold and huddling amidships, fled the stroke of death. Pell-mell the rollers tossed her along down the current, wild as the north wind tossing thistle across the fields at high harvest, dry stalks clutching each other tightly, so the gale winds tumbled her down the sea, this way, that way. Now the south wind flinging her over the north to sport with, now the east wind giving her up to the west to harry on and on. But someone saw him. Cadmus's daughter, with lovely ankles, a mortal woman once with human voice, called Leucothea. Now she lives in the sea's salt depths, esteemed by all the gods as she deserves. She pitied Odysseus, tossed, tormented so. She broke from the waves like a sheer water on the wing, lit on the wreck, and asked him kindly, "Ah, poor man, why is the god of earthquakes so dead set against you, strewing your way with such a crop of troubles? But he can't destroy you. Not for all his anger, just do as I say. You seem no fool to me. Strip off those clothes and leave your craft for the winds to hurl, and swim for it now. You must. Strike out with your arms for a landfall there, Phaeacian land, where destiny best in safety waits. Here, take this scarf. Tie it around your waist. It is immortal. Nothing to fear now, neither pain nor death. But once you grasp the mainland with your hands, untie it quickly. Throw it into the wine dark sea, far from the shore. But you turn your head away. With that, the goddess handed him the scarf and slipped back in the heaving, breaking seas like a sheer water once again, and a dark, heaving billow closed above her. All right. I'm going to skip the end of the chapter. Odysseus debates what he's going to do. He's going to follow Ino's advice. He ends up following that advice. He ties the magical scarf around his waist. And even though he's out in the open sea and tossed with all sorts of waves, the magical scarf protects him. And, he ends up washed up on shore on this island of Scheria, the Phaeacians island. And so that's where we will move on to book 6.